She woke up in a hospital after her divorce and discovered a secret about her ex. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic and emotional stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was the light. Not warm sunlight, not the familiar glow of morning through a bedroom window, but a harsh white light above her head, humming softly. The air smelled clean, too clean, like disinfectant and something metallic. For a moment, she thought she was still dreaming. Then she tried to move. A sharp ache spread through her body, and a quiet beeping sound answered her movement. Slow, steady, unforgiving. Her throat felt dry as sandpaper. Her head throbbed. And suddenly, memory came rushing back. The conference room, the long table, the stack of papers waiting between her and the man who used to be her husband. The divorce papers. She remembered the pen shaking in her hand. She remembered the lawyer explaining things she could barely hear. She remembered signing her name, one final time. And then the room had started to spin. Now, she was here. A hospital bed, thin blankets pulled up to her chest, a heart monitor beside her, measuring something she no longer trusted herself to control. She turned her head slowly. No familiar face, no concerned voice calling her name. Just the quiet rhythm of machines and the distant footsteps of nurses moving down the hallway. So this was how it felt, she thought. Not dramatic, not loud, just empty. A nurse entered a moment later, her expression calm but alert. She smiled gently, the kind of smile meant to steady people who had lost their footing. "You are awake," she said. "That is good." The words felt strange. Awake, as if she had been asleep for more than just a few minutes. The nurse explained that she had collapsed, that stress and exhaustion had pushed her body past its limit, that someone from the legal office had called for help immediately. "You are safe now," the nurse added. Safe. The word echoed, hollow. Because nothing else in her life felt safe anymore. Her marriage was over. Her future felt uncertain. And the man she had once trusted with everything was now a stranger she had signed away. The nurse checked her vitals, adjusted a drip, and asked a few routine questions. Then, before leaving, she paused. "There are a few test results the doctor will want to discuss with you," she said. "Nothing to panic about, just rest for now." After the door closed, silence returned. She stared at the ceiling again, listening to her own heartbeat echo through the machine beside her. She had come here thinking the divorce was the end of her story. She had no idea that this hospital room was about to change everything she thought she knew about her past, and about the man she had just divorced. The minutes passed slowly after the nurse left. The steady beeping beside her bed became the only proof that time was still moving forward. Each sound landed in her chest like a reminder that her body had stopped when her life felt like it already had. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to breathe. The divorce papers replayed in her mind again and again. The careful wording, the polite distance, the way her ex-husband never once raised his voice. That had hurt more than anger ever could. It felt final, clean, surgical. She had walked into that room believing she was prepared. She had been wrong. A doctor entered quietly, flipping through a chart as he approached her bed. He introduced himself in a calm, professional tone and asked how she was feeling. She told him the truth. She felt tired, empty, like her body had betrayed her before she was ready to let go. He nodded, as if he had heard that exact sentence many times before. "Severe emotional stress can push the body to shut down," he explained, "especially when someone has been carrying too much for too long." She stared at the ceiling while he spoke, letting his words wash over her without resistance. He mentioned dehydration, exhaustion, low blood pressure. Then he paused. "There were a few things in your blood work that we needed to double-check," he said carefully. "It is routine in situations like this." Routine. That word again. She turned her head slightly, searching his face for something she could not yet name. Concern, maybe, or caution. He told her they would run a few additional tests, that she would need to stay overnight for observation, that it was nothing to panic about. After he left, the room felt smaller, Her thoughts drifted to the man she had just divorced, to the way he had sat across from her, hands folded, eyes guarded, to the silence that had grown between them long before lawyers ever entered the picture. She had thought distance would protect them both. Now she was not so sure. Later that evening, another nurse came in to help her sit up. The movement made her dizzy, and she gripped the edge of the bed until the room stopped spinning. The nurse offered water and spoke gently, asking simple questions, grounding her back in the present. As the nurse checked her chart, she hesitated for half a second too long. "Is something wrong?" she asked quietly. The nurse smiled, professional but thoughtful. "The doctor will explain everything soon. Try to rest." Night fell outside the narrow hospital window. The city lights blurred into soft shapes, and exhaustion finally pulled her under. She dreamed of the life she thought she had left behind, of laughter that no longer echoed in her home, of promises made too quickly and broken too slowly. When she woke again, the room was dimmer, quieter, and the air felt different. The doctor returned, this time not alone. He pulled up a chair beside her bed, signaling that whatever he had to say would take more than a moment. She noticed how carefully he chose his words, how he looked at her chart, then back at her, as if measuring the weight of truth. "We received the final results," he said. Her heart began to race, matching the rhythm of the machine beside her. "There is something you need to know," he continued. She held her breath, unaware that the truth he was about to reveal would not only reshape her future, but quietly reach back into a past she believed she had already signed away. The doctor did not rush. He folded his hands loosely in his lap, giving her time to steady her breathing. The machine beside her bed continued its quiet rhythm, filling the silence between each word that had not yet been spoken. "There are moments," he said gently, "when the body gives us information before the mind is ready to hear it." She swallowed, her throat tightening. He explained that the initial tests had shown changes that could not be ignored. Hormone levels that did not align with what they normally saw in cases of stress alone. Subtle markers that pointed toward something more. "We ordered follow-up tests to be sure," he continued. "Those results came back this morning." She nodded once, barely. Her hands were cold beneath the thin blanket. "I need you to listen carefully," he said, "and I need you to tell me if you start feeling overwhelmed." Overwhelmed. The word almost made her laugh. She had thought she knew what that felt like already. The doctor did not give the answer yet. Instead, he explained the process, why certain tests were run, why her collapse had raised concerns beyond emotional strain, why the nurses had been watching her vitals more closely than she realized. As he spoke, pieces began to fall into place. The exhaustion that had crept in over the past few weeks, the dizziness she had brushed off as stress, the mornings she had blamed on lack of sleep. She had told herself it was all because of the divorce, because of the long nights and longer conversations that went nowhere. The doctor paused, watching her expression change as understanding slowly reached her eyes. "There is one more thing," he said softly. "Before I say it, I need to ask you a question." She turned her head toward him, heart pounding. "When was your last routine checkup?" She thought back, tried to remember. Time had blurred so badly that dates no longer felt solid. "Months ago," she said quietly. "Before everything fell apart." He nodded. "That makes sense," he replied. He glanced down at her chart again, then met her gaze. The truth sat just behind his eyes now, close enough that she could almost feel it pressing against the room. Before he could continue, there was a knock at the door. A nurse stepped inside, holding a folder, her expression unreadable. She handed it to the doctor, then looked briefly at the woman in the bed with a softness that felt different from before. Not concern, something closer to care. The doctor took the folder, thanked the nurse, and waited until the door closed again. Outside, the hallway sounds faded. Inside, everything felt suspended. "There is no immediate danger," he said first, as if anchoring her to something solid. "Your condition is stable, but it explains why your body reacted the way it did." Her fingers curled into the blanket. "Doctor," she whispered, her voice barely there. "Please." He took a slow breath. "The results confirm what we suspected," he said, "and it is important that you understand this fully because it will affect every decision moving forward." Her pulse raced. She was suddenly aware of how quiet the room had become, how even the machine beside her seemed to hold its breath. The doctor leaned forward slightly. "You are not just recovering from emotional trauma," he said. There is another life involved now. The words landed gently, but their weight was undeniable. Her mind struggled to catch up. Another life. Involved. Now. He did not say anything else. Not yet. He waited. And in that pause, everything she thought she had ended began to reach back toward her. Quietly, patiently, demanding to be seen. The words did not register right away. Another life. They hovered in the air between them, quiet and heavy, as if the room itself needed time to understand what they meant. She stared at the doctor, waiting for him to correct himself, waiting for him to say he had misspoken, that there had been a mistake. But he did not. "You are pregnant," he said, calmly, clearly. "The tests confirm it." Her breath caught in her chest. Pregnant. The word felt unreal, like it belonged to someone else's story. Someone who was not lying in a hospital bed wearing a thin gown, fresh from signing divorce papers only hours ago. She shook her head slowly. "That is not possible," she whispered. "There has to be an error." The doctor did not interrupt. He allowed the denial to surface, the way it always did. "The blood work and follow-up tests are consistent," he replied. "There is no doubt." Her hands began to tremble beneath the blanket. Pregnant meant time. It meant a beginning, and yet everything in her life had just ended. She tried to speak, but no sound came out at first. When she finally found her voice, it broke. "How far along?" she asked. "Early," he answered, "but far enough that the hormone levels are clear." Early. Her mind raced backward without permission, counting days, counting weeks, counting moments she had tried to forget. There was only one possible answer: her ex-husband. The doctor watched understanding dawn across her face. He did not ask questions she already knew the answers to. "I assume the father is your former husband," he said gently. She nodded once, tears finally gathering in her eyes. The room felt smaller again, like it was closing in around her. "I did not know," she said quietly. "I swear I did not know." "I believe you," the doctor replied. "Many women do not realize it this early, especially under severe emotional stress." The machine beside her picked up speed as her heart began to race. The doctor placed a steady hand on the rail of the bed, grounding the moment. "There is something else you need to be aware of," he continued. "Your collapse was not just due to stress. Your body is adjusting, and because of that, we need to monitor you closely." Her stomach tightened. "Is the baby okay?" That question surprised her. It slipped out before fear could stop it. The doctor met her eyes. "Right now, the signs are promising. But you will need rest, care, stability." Stability? She almost laughed. Nothing about her life was stable anymore. She had no marriage, no shared home, no plan. And now, she carried a life that tied her forever to the man she had just divorced. "Does he know?" she asked. The doctor shook his head. "No, and we will not contact anyone without your consent." Relief and panic collided inside her chest. She closed her eyes, tears finally spilling over. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, steady grief mixed with something else she was not ready to name. Hope, fear, responsibility. The doctor gave her time. Then he spoke again. "For now, your focus needs to be on your health," he said. "We will arrange follow-up care, prenatal monitoring, and when you are ready, we can talk about next steps." Next steps. She had thought the divorce was her final step forward. Now she realized it was not the end of her story at all. As the doctor left the room, she lay back against the pillow, one hand slowly resting on her stomach without thinking. Somewhere deep inside her, something had already begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. She did not sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the same word echoed through her thoughts. Pregnant. It did not come with joy, not yet. It came with weight. Morning light filtered through the narrow hospital window, pale and uncertain. A nurse came in quietly to check her vitals, her movements gentle, almost protective. She asked how she was feeling, and for the first time, the woman did not know how to answer. "I am here," she said finally. The nurse nodded, as if she understood exactly what that meant. Breakfast arrived untouched. Her appetite was gone, replaced by a constant knot in her stomach. Not nausea, not pain, just the awareness that everything had changed. Later, the doctor returned with a folder in his hands. This time, his tone was different, less clinical, more human. "We want to keep you here another day," he explained. "Not because there is immediate danger, but because stress like yours does not disappear overnight. And now, there is more than one heartbeat to consider. More than one heartbeat. The phrase settled into her chest slowly. He explained what the next few weeks would look like. Follow-up appointments, prenatal vitamins, restrictions she would need to respect. Nothing extreme, but enough to remind her that her body was no longer hers alone. She listened without interrupting, nodding when appropriate, absorbing information she never expected to receive in this place, on this day. After he left, silence returned again. She reached for her phone instinctively, then stopped. Her ex-husband's name sat near the top of her contacts, unchanged. Familiar. Danger. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She imagined his reaction, the disbelief, the confusion, the questions she was not ready to answer. She imagined his voice, steady and distant, asking how this was possible when they had already ended everything. She set the phone down. Not yet. She needed time to breathe, time to understand what this meant without his presence filling the room. A social worker visited that afternoon, offering resources, support, options. She listened politely, but her mind drifted elsewhere, to the house she no longer lived in, to the quiet evenings that now felt impossibly far away. She was no longer just recovering from a divorce, she was protecting something fragile. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she stood carefully by the window, one hand resting against the glass. The city looked the same as it always had, busy, indifferent, alive. Her life had split into before and after without warning. She thought about the last argument she had with her ex-husband, the accusations, the silence that followed, the way they had both walked away, believing the other had already given up. What if they had both been wrong? The thought frightened her more than anger ever had. Later, alone again, she placed her hand on her stomach, not out of instinct this time, but intention. There was no movement to feel, no sign she could point to, just trust. "I will figure this out," she whispered, more promise than certainty. She did not know how she would tell him, or when, or what his place in this new reality would be. But she knew one thing: whatever had broken them before, this truth could not be ignored. And for the first time since she collapsed on the floor of that conference room, she did not feel like she was falling anymore. She was standing still, waiting, and somewhere inside her, life was quietly insisting on being given a chance. The hospital room felt different once she knew. Not quieter, not louder, just heavier. Every sound seemed sharper now. The soft shuffle of nurses in the hallway, the muted announcement over the intercom. Even her own breathing felt deliberate, as if her body was constantly reminding her that it was no longer alone. It was late morning when the knock came. Not the gentle, expected tap of a nurse. This one was hesitant, uncertain. She looked up from the bed just as the door opened, and there he was. Her ex-husband stood frozen in the doorway, one hand still on the handle, as if he was not sure whether he had permission to enter her life again. He looked the same, and yet not at all. His posture was tense, his face drawn. The confident distance he had worn so carefully during the divorce was gone. "I heard you collapsed," he said quietly. "Someone from the firm called me by mistake. They thought I was still listed as your emergency contact." She did not answer right away. Seeing him here, in this place, stripped of lawyers and signatures, unsettled her more than she expected. This was not the version of him she had prepared herself to forget. "I did not mean to come unannounced," he added. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." She nodded slowly. "I am stable." The word felt strange on her tongue. He took a step closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. His eyes moved briefly to the monitor, then back to her face, as if he was afraid to look too long at anything that confirmed she had been fragile without him. "You scared me," he said. The admission slipped out before he could stop it. Something shifted between them. She felt it immediately. "I did not plan for any of this," she replied, her voice steady but guarded. "I know," he said. "I never thought you would end up here. I keep replaying that morning in my head, wondering if I should have said something different." She looked away, toward the window. "We both had chances." Silence filled the space again, but it was not empty. It was crowded with things they had never finished saying. He cleared his throat. "The nurse told me you were being monitored, that it might take a few days before you were discharged." "Yes," she said. He hesitated, then asked the question she had been dreading. "Is there something else going on?" he asked. You look different. Her heart began to pound. This was it, or almost. She met his gaze, searching his face for the man she once trusted completely. The man who had walked away believing the worst of her. The man who did not yet know that their lives were already tangled again in a way neither of them had planned. "There are things I am still processing," she said carefully. "Things I did not know before today." He nodded, respecting the boundary, even though it was clear the distance hurt. "I am not here to push," he said. "I just wanted you to know that, despite everything, I never wanted you to be alone like this." The words settled into her chest slowly. Before either of them could say more, a nurse appeared at the door, polite but firm. Visiting hours were ending. She needed rest. He stepped back, pausing one last time. "If you need anything," he said, "I am nearby." Then he left. The door closed softly behind him. She exhaled a breath she did not realize she had been holding. He was closer now, not just physically, but emotionally. And with every step he took back into her orbit, the truth she carried became heavier. Soon, she would have to tell him. And when she did, nothing between them would ever be simple again. She thought she would have more time. Time to prepare the words. Time to decide how to say it. Time to brace herself for his reaction. She was wrong. The following morning, the doctor returned with a nurse and a thin tablet in his hand. His expression was calm, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that immediately set her on edge. "We reviewed everything again overnight," he said. "Your condition remains stable, which is good, but there is something else that came up when we went through your records." She sat up a little straighter. "What kind of records?" "Insurance, medical history, emergency contacts," he explained. "Details that sometimes reveal more than we expect." Her stomach tightened. Before she could ask another question, the door opened behind them. Her ex-husband stepped inside again. He looked surprised to see the doctor there, then confused when he noticed the tension in the room. "Is everything okay?" he asked. The doctor glanced between them, then back to her. "I was not aware you had company, but given the circumstances, it may be appropriate that you hear this together." Her heart dropped. She shook her head slightly, but the doctor continued, unaware of the silent warning in her eyes. "There was a misunderstanding surrounding your divorce," he said carefully. "One that has medical relevance now." Her ex-husband frowned. "What do you mean?" The doctor turned the tablet so they could both see the screen. "Based on timelines and documentation, it appears that there was overlap between the onset of your symptoms and the period before the divorce was finalized." The room felt too small again. The doctor looked at her. "You did not conceal anything, but there were assumptions made, and those assumptions affected decisions that were taken too quickly." Her ex-husband's gaze snapped to her face. "Assumptions about what?" She inhaled slowly, her chest tight. "The pregnancy," the doctor said gently. "It aligns with the time when you were still together." Silence crashed down around them. Her ex-husband froze. "Pregnancy?" he repeated, the word barely audible. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. There was no escape now. "Yes," she said quietly. "I found out yesterday." His face drained of color. "You are pregnant?" he asked, disbelief and shock colliding in his voice. She nodded. "I did not know before. I swear I did not." The doctor stepped back, sensing the moment no longer belonged to him. "I will give you both some privacy," he said, then left the room. The door closed softly. Her ex-husband stood there, motionless, staring at her as if she had just rewritten everything he thought he knew. "This cannot be real," he said finally. "We divorced because I thought you had already moved on. Because I thought—" He stopped himself, pain flashing across his face. She looked at him steadily. "You thought I betrayed you, and I thought you had already given up on us." His hands clenched at his sides. "I never cheated," he said. "I was being blackmailed. Someone fed you lies, and when you pulled away, I thought you believed them." Her breath caught. "No one ever told me that," she whispered. "Because I did not realize how badly things had been twisted until it was too late," he replied. "By then, you had already filed." The truth settled between them, heavy and unavoidable. All the silence, all the distance, all the pain, built on something that had never been real. His voice broke when he spoke again. "And now there is a child?" She nodded, tears finally slipping free. "Yes." He took a slow step toward her bed, stopping just short of touching her. "That child is mine," he said, not as a question, but as a promise. In that hospital room, surrounded by machines meant to keep hearts beating, the truth finally surfaced. Not just about the baby, but about everything that had torn them apart. The room stayed quiet long after the truth was spoken. Not the empty silence they had lived with for months, but something heavier, something honest. Her ex-husband pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat down slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter what little balance they had just found. His eyes never left her face. "I should have fought harder," he said. "Not in court, with you." She listened without interrupting. For the first time, she did not feel the need to defend herself. "I let pride speak when I should have listened," he continued. "When the rumors started, I convinced myself that walking away would hurt less than staying and being wrong." She let out a shaky breath. "I thought your silence was your answer." He shook his head. It was fear. The words settled between them, stripping away everything else. A nurse entered quietly to check her vitals, offering a small smile when she noticed him sitting there. She adjusted the monitor, then gently placed a sensor on her stomach. "You might hear something new today," the nurse said softly, "if you are ready." Her heart skipped. The nurse dimmed the lights slightly and turned on a small screen beside the bed. The room filled with a low, rhythmic sound. At first it was faint, then it grew stronger, a heartbeat. Her breath caught in her chest as tears blurred her vision. Her ex-husband froze, then leaned forward instinctively, his hand hovering just above the bed rail. "Is that?" "Yes," the nurse said gently. "That is your baby." The word "your" landed differently this time. She looked at him, and for the first time since he walked into the room, she saw something break open in his expression. Not guilt, not regret, wonder. He swallowed hard. "I had no idea," he whispered. "All this time I thought I had already lost everything." She reached out without thinking, her fingers brushing his. He did not pull away. "I was afraid to tell you," she admitted. "Afraid you would think this was another lie." He shook his head. "No, not anymore." The nurse finished her check and quietly left them alone. They sat there together, listening to the steady rhythm that connected them both. A reminder that something had survived, even when they had not. "I do not expect forgiveness overnight," he said after a moment. "And I am not asking you to forget what happened." She nodded. "I am not ready for easy answers. I am ready for responsibility," he replied. "For showing up, for protecting you and our child, no matter what you decide about us." The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache. For the first time since the divorce, she did not feel like she was carrying everything alone. Outside the hospital window, the afternoon light softened. Inside, something fragile but real began to take shape. Healing did not arrive all at once, but it had begun. She was discharged 2 days later. The doctor insisted on rest, follow-up appointments, and a slower pace than the one she had been forcing herself to keep for months. As she signed the release papers, she realized how different this moment felt from the last set of documents she had signed. Those had ended something. These were protecting something. Her ex-husband waited quietly near the exit, holding her coat. He did not assume anything. He did not rush her. When she reached him, he gently draped it over her shoulders, careful, attentive in a way that felt new and familiar at the same time. They did not go back to the house they once shared. Instead, he drove her to a small apartment he had prepared nearby. Nothing extravagant, just a space where she could rest without pressure or memories closing in from every corner. The days that followed were quiet. He came by with groceries, drove her to appointments, sat beside her during checkups without taking control, without demanding answers. When she felt overwhelmed, he listened. When she needed space, he respected it. Healing moved slowly. There were moments when the past still hurt, when words spoken months ago resurfaced without warning, when fear crept in late at night, whispering doubts neither of them could silence completely. But there were moments of light too. The first time she felt steady enough to cook again. The first morning she woke without dread in her chest. The way he spoke to her stomach softly when he thought she was asleep. One afternoon, during a routine appointment, the doctor smiled as he reviewed the results. "Everything looks good," he said. "You are both doing well." Both. The words still felt strange, but it no longer scared her. Later that evening, they sat together on the balcony as the city lights came alive below. The air was cool, calm, honest. "I am not asking you to go back to what we were," he said quietly. "That version of us was broken." She nodded. "I do not want to go backward. I want to build something new," he continued, "with truth, with patience, with our child at the center of every decision." She looked at him for a long moment. This time, there were no accusations, no misunderstandings, no silence standing between them, just choice. "I am willing to try," she said, slowly. Relief washed over his face, but he did not celebrate. He simply reached for her hand and held it. Months later, she stood in a hospital room once again. But this time, the light was warm. This time, the sound filling the room was not a monitor, but a cry. Small, strong, alive. She held her baby close, tears streaming freely now, unburdened by fear. Her ex-husband stood beside her, his hand steady on her back, his eyes filled with something he had nearly lost. Their family had not begun the way they planned, but it had begun with truth. And sometimes, she realized, that made all the difference.